to validate data on the customer survey form for the Red Ball Pizza website. The online customer survey form for Red Ball Pizza is nearly complete. One remaining task is to validate the data values. Validation is the process by which the field values from a web form are tested before they can be used. You can use two types of validation. With server-side validation, data is validated after it is sent to the server. With client-side validation, data is validated before it is sent to the server. You should use both types of validation to reduce the workload on the server. For example, in a payment form, verify that a user has entered a valid credit card number and completed all of the fields required for payment before submitting the data to the server. Sending an invalid payment to the server slows down the process and creates extra work for a server that may be dealing with hundreds or thousands of transactions every hour. HTML5 includes several attributes for performing client-side validation. Some browsers such as Opera, Firefox, and Google Chrome support these attributes. Others do not. The exact appearance of these validation tools also differs among the browsers that do support client-side validation. The Red Ball Pizza customer survey form includes 3 required fields: cust name, email, and receipt. If a user leaves any of those fields blank, the browser should notify the user about the missing data and cancel the submission. You can indicate that a field is required by adding the required attribute to the control element. In survey.htm, add the required attribute to the input element for the cust name field, the email field, and the receipt field. When you save the file and display it in a browser, you can click the Submit My Survey button to submit the form. Because the required fields are blank, the browser does not submit the form, but displays an error message for the first invalid field. The appearance of the error message depends on the browser. Enter a name and click the Submit My Survey button again. Now the browser accepts the name, but displays an error message next to the blank input box for the email field. Enter an email address and submit the form again. The browser accepts the name and email address, but displays an error message next to the blank receipt field. Enter a receipt number and then submit the form. Now the browser accepts the data and displays a message, which comes from the formsubmit.js JavaScript file you linked to survey.htm. The required attribute checks to see whether any type of data has been entered in a field. For example, you could type Alice Nichols in the email field and still successfully submit the form. The only problem is that Alice Nichols is not an email address. To check whether this data is in the username@domain format, such as alice.nichols@redballpizza.com, you need to set this field to the email data type. Now when you enter Alice Nichols in the email field and submit the form, the browser rejects the text entry because it doesn't match the pattern of an email address. Change the entry to a valid email address and then resubmit the form. Now the browser displays no validation error messages. If you display this form in a browser that does not support validation and then submit the form with invalid and missing data, the browser attempts to send the form anyway. If client-side validation is an essential part of your website design, use a JavaScript library like jQuery or a program of your own creation to perform the validation on the user's computer. Now you know how to validate a web form using the HTML5 required and type attributes.